Hey, happy Friday. This week we found out why nobody asked for another Apple Vision Pro, the first real pictures of the Pixel 8 and 8 Pro leaked and Google announced Bard will be coming to 10 more countries soon. Welcome to the Friday Checkout. Okay, we'll start the brief with some quick updates. iOS 17.5 was released this week, which mostly revolved around bringing RCS messaging to the US via a new partnership between Apple and the 4 major US carriers. This is basically like the iPhone equivalent of Google's Project Terra, which I really hope isn't going to mess up my stats. And if you want to see what all the fuss is about, there is a great explicable article on The Verge, which explains how much better RCS is than the good old SMS MMS standard that still reigns supreme in the US. Also this week, Facebook's parent company, Meta, started offering full refunds for its Quest virtual reality headset. That's something they've never done before, and I can only assume it's because sales of the Quest have been absolutely terrible as their revenue dropped by 14% last quarter. Then, in sad news for everyone who hates Microsoft Teams meetings, Microsoft Teams meetings will now soon be able to be run entirely on an Apple Silicon Mac without having to use any kind of Windows emulation layer. So that means even higher quality video for your next meeting. Yet. And over at Twitter, Elon Musk confirmed that Twitter might bring back the X application in the near future, which would combine the social network with the payment platform formerly known as Square, but which is now called Block. Oh no. And speaking of no, this week we also learned that Sony killed off its VAIO business just 3 years after reviving it. The computer maker had actually filed for bankruptcy way back in 2019, but it was bought out by its employees who kept the brand alive. But apparently not enough people were interested in buying a new VAIO laptop. Sad to see. And in a surprising turn of events, Samsung seemed to accidentally leak its own Exynos chip that will be powering some of its 2024 flagship phones. The current Exynos chips are quite underwhelming compared to Qualcomm's offerings, so maybe this one will be better. We'll have to wait and see. And as for releases next week, well, we'll probably get the Nothing Phone 3 launch event on Monday, July, and then on Tuesday, July, the second developer preview of Android 14 should drop. Okay, that's it for the brief. And for my first story of the week, we have to talk about the shockingly bad reception of the new Apple Vision Pro headset. Remember how everyone thought it was going to be a huge hit? Well, apparently they were wrong, as pre-orders for the headset were weaker than expected, but not weaker than Apple's marketing budget. Apple's shares immediately dropped 3% following the news. But the biggest issue here is that the Vision Pro S development cycle took almost 7 years and cost billions of dollars. Yet it seems like customers aren't exactly lining up to buy this thing. Even TechCrunch, who usually has pretty rosy opinions about Apple products, said the Vision Pro was a disappointment. And the problem here seems to be the price. I mean, $3,499 is a lot of money, even for a cutting-edge piece of tech. But the Vision Pro doesn't really feel cutting-edge. It doesn't even have iSight displays, which is probably why early reviews have said it feels like being punched in the face. Also, many developers didn't seem particularly excited about developing apps for this platform, as the SDK was apparently late, buggy, and incomplete when it dropped. And then Apple did something very out of character by delaying the launch of the Vision Pro S companion app until October, which made pre-orders worse. Anyway, the upshot here is that this failure seems to finally lay to rest the question of whether or not Apple can make a successful pivot into making AR/VR hardware, and the answer appears to be no. Sorry, Tim. Okay, for my second story of the week, we have some interesting news from the world of artificial intelligence. So earlier this week, Google published an AI paper that sounded a bit like science fiction. It proposed a system that could automatically generate videos by just looking at a text prompt. The results looked really impressive, but unfortunately, the paper didn't include any videos of the actual results, which cast some doubt on how realistic these videos actually were. Now, a few days later, we got our answer. A user on social media posted a link to an AI playground page where you could try out the model for yourself, and the results were actually pretty impressive. You could type in prompts like, "a cat riding a Roomba vacuum cleaner through the woods," and then the AI would generate an actual short video of that. Of course, it's not perfect yet. For example, the models currently live on Google's servers and are not open source. So we don't know how the sausage gets made exactly. And this particular demo version can only generate 4-second clips at a resolution of 64 by 64 pixels, which is not exactly high definition. Plus, we don't know what the computational requirements are for something like this. But given that Google is practically the leading AI research lab in the world, I'm guessing it won't be long before we see consumer-friendly applications of this technology, and I'm definitely looking forward to that. Okay, and for my third story of the week, we have a couple of new discoveries regarding the upcoming Pixel 8 and 8 Pro. So first, we've got some details on the design of the vanilla Pixel 8 thanks to a leaked official image shared by a well-known tipper. And the picture shows the phone in a protective case, so we can't see too much of the design itself. But we do get some clues. For example, the volume buttons seem to have moved to the right side of the phone, which makes a lot of sense as that's how most Android phones do it. Also, there's now an NFC chip on the back of the device which will enable contactless payments. Then Michelle Ramone, who has a great track record, revealed some specifications of the Pixel 8 Pro, and he says we'll get a 6.7-inch QHD plus OLED display with a 120 Hz refresh rate. It'll have the same sensor chip as the Pixel 7 Pro and the same main camera sensor as the regular Pixel 8, but the telephoto camera is going to be upgraded to a 48 megapixel sensor. The RAM is staying the same at 12 gigabytes, but the storage will go up from 128 gigabytes to 256 gigabytes. Not too shabby. And if you want to learn how I make videos like these every single week, well, you can take my free course on Skillshare. It's a 6-part mini course where I explain my creative process and how I built this YouTube channel from scratch. So if you're interested, you can find it on Skillshare or alternatively down in the description. So thanks for watching and for your generous support, and I'll see you next Friday.